Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our class of International Finance. And today we're going to start with a new topic. I actually really like this class and this topic. I think it's really interesting. It's kind of easy to understand. And, and I think it's the first step to understand how exchange rates behave around the world. And it gives you some hints about how can you manage your international financial strategy. I think it's maybe the one of the first steps that you need to do or to go ahead in trying to understand and to have a better performance on international finance strategies. So let me start this topic with a story because I want to tell you a story that can illustrate why this concept is so important. So I'm going back to what I did in the first partial. I usually do this in a whiteboard in the classroom, but now we have this issue that I can see you. So I will do the same thing, but in Excel. And I'm using Excel because I think I'm an accountant. I really like Excel. So this story has these characteristics. Let me tell you so you understand the story. Imagine that you are a person. So you are this person and you live just in the border. This black line is the border between Mexico and the US. Okay, so you live in the border and you can move freely between Mexico and the US. You can go from here to here. You live literally in the border. And the assumption of this story is that um, you have like a super powerful car or something and you can pass through the border without any line. You don't have to wait anything. You don't have to pay anything. You can just move freely between the US and Mexico, right? And imagine that you also really like a burger, a hamburger. Here I have a picture of a hamburger. So let me put it in here. Oh, it's too big. Let me make it smaller. So we have this hamburger. You really like this hamburger. And in Mexico, this hamburger costs 1 peso. Let's assume that it costs 1 peso. And imagine that also in the US, there is another restaurant with exactly the same burger. It is exactly the same taste, the same size, the same quality. Everything is the same. So for you, it doesn't matter if you buy this burger of this burger because it tastes the same. It's the same burger. And in the US, it costs $1 too. And the last assumption, and maybe the most difficult assumption to believe, this assumption is that the exchange rate between peso and the Mexican peso and the dollar is 1 to 1. That means 1 peso is $1. You have to pay 1 peso for $1. So if we go back to the story, if you are this person, where would you buy your burger? In Mexico or in the US? It doesn't really matter, right? Because it's the same burger, it costs the same. So if you are in Mexico, you can buy your burger directly with 1 peso. But if you are on the other side because you went, I don't know, to do something in the US, you can buy the same burger for $1. You only have to exchange your peso for $1 and you can buy the same burger. I hope that we are clear until here. So for this person, it doesn't matter where he or she buys the burger, in the Mexico or in the US. But imagine that after 1 year, the prices of goods in Mexico increased. That means inflation, right? When the prices of goods are more expensive in some country. So imagine that maybe there are more taxes, or imagine that maybe uh, something happened with cows and now meat is more expensive. So in the end, the burger costs 2 pesos instead of 1 peso. So it's quite expensive, right? Because if I buy the burger in Mexico, I will have to pay 2 pesos. But if I cross the border and I go to the US, I will buy the same burger at $1 and I can just exchange 1 peso for $1. So where will I buy my burger? In the US. So not only me, but other people will move to the US to buy their burgers over there. So what do you think will happen to the American dollar? There will be more demand, right? More demand for the dollars. people will demand more dollars. And if you go back to one of the first stories that I told you in the first partial, I think the story was about the Olympics in the UK and all that, that the price had to increase because people wanted to go to the UK. So the people who sold the British pounds had to increase the price. So the same thing will happen in here. What do you think will be the fair price for the dollar? If everyone goes to the US and to buy the burger, the price of the dollar will have to increase because there is more demand for dollars. So probably the price will go up until 2 pesos per dollar. So at 2 pesos per dollar, again, I don't care where do I buy my burger. I mean, I can stay in Mexico and pay 2 pesos for one burger, or I can change 2 pesos for $1 and buy it in the US. So in this very simple example, I think that I show you that inflation, the rise of prices, it's something that affects the exchange rate. Why? Because if your economy has a lot of inflation, that will affect negatively to your currency. In this case, the goods of the price of goods in Mexico increased by the double, and that caused that Mexicans and people living in the border moved to the US and they demanded dollars. So that caused a depreciation of the peso or appreciation of the dollar. I hope this is a very simple story, and it's maybe the first step or maybe the most basic theory to explain how exchange rates change. So let me go back to the presentation just to summarize everything, wrap up everything. So I'm going to ask you a question. Now that you understand this, do you think that the Mexican peso can be on a one-to-one basis with the US dollar? Do you think that it is possible that at some point in time we can experience a one-to-one, 1 peso for $1? Well, the answer is here on the presentation, but it says that only if the Mexican inflation is lower than in the US, because that will make our currency more attractive. So because our goods will be cheaper and then people will prefer our goods. So that is an assumption that I don't see how it can happen. Maybe in 100 years, we can be, we can have a different industry and economic system, and we can face this. But I honestly don't see any chance that our inflation will be lower in the long term with the US. So this theory that says that the price of goods affect the exchange rate is called the law of one price. I think I have it in here, or that is the name of the, and where is it? It should be in here. It's the law of one price. In Spanish, is ley de un solo precio. So the law of one price says that if there is a change on the price of goods, that will affect the price of the currency. And this law of one price, I will well, I think I will explain in another second. This law of one price, which is like the major theory, has two applications or two sub-theories, I will say. One is called the power purchasing parity absolute version, and the other one is the relative version. I will explain that in the next two videos. Because in the story that I told you, we assume that there are only burgers in the economy, right? I didn't tell you about sodas or French fries. I only told you about burgers. So burgers define everything, right? So in the theory that is linked to this, that only one good defines everything, is called the absolute version of the power purchasing parity theory, PPP theory, like 3Ps. I will explain in the next video. So if you assume that only one good can affect everything, that will be the absolute version of the theory, of the PPP theory. But if you assume that it's not only one good, but inflation in general, that will be the relative version of the PPP theory. I think I will stop this video in here, which is the introduction to the law of one price, and I will then move to the next video where I will explain first the absolute version of PPP theory.